Cosmic here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are finally going to talk about Union Arena that is confirmed for an English release in North America. And I have seen a lot of confusion because people understandably didn't follow this game for the last year in Japan, and a lot of people, I'm starting to realize, don't know what Weiss Schwarz is or kind of what its placement is in the overall industry and kind of the overall TCG market. So yes, this video is largely going to be a, hey, you don't know what Union Arena is? I'm going to tell you all about it, the history of it in Japan, kind of where it's gone, and again, where does it fit in 2024? Because if you've been following the TCG market, things are pretty rough. So does this even have a chance at surviving? And honestly, I think this is very well positioned in the market, and we're going to talk about that in just a bit. But first, what is Union Arena? What type of game is it? Well, if you've ever want to relive your favorite scenes from an anime or game, as we'll find out, we are going to be covering games as well in Union Arena, and play out those battles, or if you just want to know who would win between like Mahito and Ichigo, this is the game for you. So Union Arena takes a lot of popular IPs using a single rule set. That is the important part. Again, like Weiss Schwarz, and spoiler, we're going to be making a lot of comparisons to Weiss for these reasons. That says, hey, you learn one system, you pick up an IP as we go, and you just get to battle it out. With that, there is the understanding that they are going to be a little bit more basic in terms of a skill design standpoint because you want them to be easily approachable. So with that, kind of where does this fit? Is it for collectors? Is it for competitive players? And just looking at 2023, and some of these do expand into 2024, but I want to give you an overall idea of what IPs do they even get and what can we look forward to is this entire list here. Now, yes, at the time of recording, we do have JJK, Bleach, and Hunter x Hunter confirmed for the North American launch. However, because Bandai owns things like Tales of Arise, I would fully expect that to come out. And we are going to talk a little bit more about the release schedule and kind of what to look forward to a little bit later, but I at least want to touch on the IPs up front and really sell that this is a casual collector's game. Even in Japan, it doesn't have a huge competitive following, and I think there's a lot of people who might not understand, again, if this is going to be the collector side versus competitive side, what does this look like for tournament players? And so again, to make the comparison to Weiss, just from a quick numbers perspective and keep myself honest, the most recent California event had 280 players, and Weiss in Houston had 170 players. For this type of game, that's pretty good. That's really about what you would expect because, again, these are going to be IP focused. Generally, when you do have a IP that's releasing every month and you as a player or a collector are going to say, okay, well, I really only care about JJK and Demon Slayer, just to use two examples, right? Those might be 6 months apart. So you're going to be less interested in going to a tournament where you have just your one deck from 6, 7, or 8 months ago while you're waiting for that new set. So with that, there's also the prize support, which we'll talk about again a little bit later, which is always going to be focused around what are the most recent releases. So especially in Japan, it'll be like in 3-month blocks where, hey, these are the different sets that you're going to be getting. So again, that's just a very high level overview. We'll get into each of these in a little bit more detail. But again, let's talk about the collector's aspect and why people love to pay some good prices for these cards. And let's just look at these. Now, each set is going to have its own foiling style and kind of high rarity collection, but these look absolutely gorgeous. And a lot of these have been selling for $300 to $400 to $500, depending on the IP and depending on the market itself, especially from at least what I was able to track. Demon Slayer had the highest price from a in-set card. There's also going to be winner cards, we'll talk about later, but the Tanjiro went for $400, if I remember correctly, the $300 to $400, I guess, whatever that conversion comes out to be from yen to USD, but you can get a general idea. So again, this is just an overview of there's a lot of different IPs that we can get, but ultimately it is going to be something that players vote on and, you know, choose which ones are going to be released. There was a survey that was launched during the Metaverse announcement that had a ton of different options that people could vote for. And because of how this market fits and what these IPs look like, chances are it is just going to be a pure popularity contest in terms of which IPs we get in what order. Because again, a lot of these are done. It is just going to be swapping them from Japanese to English. So Now let's get into it. And I'm not going to do a how to play in this video itself. There's tons of content out there. I really just want to give more of the history and kind of where does this fit in the grand scheme of things. So you might be saying, but didn't this game die in Japan? Isn't it just awful? And, who's even playing this? Surprise, it had a huge revival in the last couple of months, and you might be wondering why. But for those, again, who haven't been following it and don't know much about it, let's talk about the absolute disaster of a launch that this had, right? So Weiss Schwarz, as we talked about, also gets monthly launches. Union Arena itself will also have monthly launches of IPs. And when you're introducing one of these games into a market that is already quite crowded, both Japan and, to be fair, North America will have a similar issue, you have to do a pre-order only system or you're going to be left with these boxes. So yes, when Union Arena launched and for the first few months, there was these bottom barrel fire sale, etc., prices that we've seen. For those that have been following the TCG market in North America, oh God, Cardfight Vanguard, Flesh and Blood, Battle Spirits, Digimon, like a ton of different games are also fire sailing right now because we are in a bubble that is about to burst, or as some would say, even bursted already, because things like Magic sales are extremely down right now for sealed sets. And Collectible Investments Rudy, I should say, did a video on this more recently where he just talked about, hey, even the big three are doing really bad right now. Pokemon is doing the best out of them, so to speak, but the industry as a whole, as we're moving away from COVID, as people are now getting back to other things, right? The market is struggling. So understandably so with Union Arena and not being able to adjust yet to its Japanese audience. And again, I will expect that we see this here in North America as well. If people don't approach this correctly and pre-order only it, we are going to see things like Weiss right now has failures of sets where the boxes are under cost. However, they have other sets that are just doing absolutely insane, like Azure Lane was extremely popular, and that begs the question here as well, like how will JJK do versus how will a Tekken one do, right? So you have to consider what the North American audience is going to be looking forward to and where that sits. So yes, on the left here we have how it started, $20 boxes, $16 boxes, $5 starter decks, right? It was as low as prices could get. And there have been other card games that we've seen this for time and time again in Japan, but generally a newer card game like this, especially with some popular IPs, shouldn't be that low, right? However, more recently, especially in the last few months, there are now stores that have it on display. There are stores who are wanting to buy the highest rarity cards from the set. There are stores who are buying the prize cards, right? Because people are asking for them, and things like the JJK winner card is going for a decent amount, it turns out, right? And it has been this just complete turnaround on how it's being approached. And because it's gotten to the point where only certain stores are carrying it or only a certain amount of pre-orders are being taken in, you no longer have this as bad as a product flood that was going on initially, because it's usually really exciting when a new card game launches. People want to try all the different IPs. And let's face it, I love Tales of Arise, as you can tell by the thumbnail. I'm super excited for it, but I cannot imagine that Tales of Arise is going to do well compared to something like Demon Slayer or JJK, right? So those sets, even though Tales is one of the better sets in Japan and remains one of the top tier sets in Japan, which is crazy for how, it was an introduction set, all things considered, it's still doing very well and holding its own from a competitive standpoint. But it's something that just is not going to have the same amount of demand as something like Demon Slayer, JJK, or even My Hero. And they're also getting like a Yu Yu Hakusho set, which apparently Universes doesn't have exclusive rights to. So we could see a Yu Yu Hakusho set for Union Arena in North America, which would be really funny and kind of really cool, because I know that the new art that they're doing for that is absolutely gorgeous. But with that out of the way, I really want to talk about, okay, that's kind of where it's at, but what does that mean for the market, right? So surprisingly, Union Arena did hit top 10 sales in Japan. And again, for those that don't know, that's pretty insane for how flooded their market is, because Japan has a much more, public transportation friendly. A lot of card shops are in the area. You'll always find someone that plays some type of card game, right? It's very easy to hop on a train and go visit, where here in the States and really the rest of the world, it's, you got to go drive or take a train that might be 2 hours away or something, right? It's a very different scenario. However, Union Arena did make top 10 sales. This was through April through July. To be fair, for the other reports we've seen out of this, it's been outside of the top 10. But the thing I do want to highlight here is the black arrows, both for the number 5 here in Japan, and then also looking at ICV2, Which, full disclaimer, yes, it doesn't cover all distributors, but it's like the only good market indicator that we have for North America in terms of like what the product is moving like. So again, take that with a huge grain of salt, but Weiss does usually land itself in the top 10 season after season after season. Because again, collectors are buying a lot of the product. We've seen things like My Hero pop up time and time again because it is a popular IP. So even though that we won't have a huge, like, and we'll get into this in just a little bit more, but I wouldn't expect any massive regionals for Union Arena, but it is a game that will likely still sell well as long as we are getting good IPs for it. And I would not be surprised that if they find a quarter, like if we get JJK and then Demon Slayer and then My Hero, like all those stacked up, back to back to back, absolutely would expect Union Arena to be a top 10 game. However, because it is not as competitive driven as we've seen for some other areas, or the tournament support is not always what we might expect, it will not be something that demands like, oh, look at these 500 or 1,000 player regionals like One Piece is getting, because it just doesn't have that same major IP focus, right? Because you are fragmenting it out, because you're having a new monthly release. Not everyone's going to be as excited for Union Arena all at the same time, so it's harder to get people to rally behind a single event. However, that's where I have to add my little caveat here as well. I've talked a lot about the collectability side of it and talked about the various IP side of it, but where does this set as a game itself? And especially for a card game like Weiss Schwarz as well, how is it from a gameplay perspective? Is it engaging? Is it bringing all new mechanics into the industry? Is it doing something fun and unique and all that stuff? Not really. It is just a very okay game, which I know that might sound crazy. Like, I'm super trying to hype it up and talk about all the collector side of it. And, here's why you should look forward to Union Arena and all that stuff. But it's just an okay game. It is very basic in the regard is that it's very easy to approach. The effects are very streamlined. But in that regard, it is a really cool casual game to get in with your friends, saying like, hey, I'm going to a major event like Gen Con. I'm going to throw my JJK deck in my bag. And I'm sure I'm going to find someone else who has a Union Arena deck, because they are also like, hey, one person might like Demon Slayer, one person might like JJK, things of that nature, right? It's very easy to put yourself in a situation where everyone's going to have at least one deck of their favorite IP. And because these are more collector-driven games, the base rarity is usually super cheap to get into. So it's also a very affordable game to just pick up from your favorite. And again, maybe you're like me and you really love Tails and you're really excited for the Rinwell deck, right? It'll be like $80 tops for a Rinwell deck, right? However, if you want to get the max rarity and we want to talk about the shop promos and all that stuff, then you're going to be spending some really good money, right? We're talking $500, $600, $700, $800, like a lot of money depending on the IP that you pick up. So in that regard, there's also the resale value of it. While it might not be the most competitively exciting game, because they are super fast games and super streamlined in their effects, it's not going to be best of 3, things of that nature. But if you just care about like, oh, can I get a really cool promo then to sell back? Well, you can. And we have seen them go for anywhere between, I think the lower end of them has been like $100 to all the way up to about 500-ish, depending on, again, if it's JJK or some of the other IPs. I've tried to look up some of the sales numbers for like in preparation of this video. They're a little bit more difficult to find because you have things like YYT, you have things like eBay, which are inflated, or they're trying to come off like a secondary or even a third buyer who picked up the card, right? So it's a little bit more difficult to get exactly what those price ranges are, but we have seen some very good numbers in terms of a, collector standpoint and still having some good cards to play for. So where is the revival? Like, what happened, right, in Japan that really turned this game around? And so we've seen things like the Volume 2, and this is a very common practice in Weiss Schwarz as well, right? So I think there was certainly some expectation within the market that says, hey, here's what Weiss does. Here's where they set up their series to say, okay, well, one part of it might not have been as good, but hey, you can look forward to this set. Usually they're about a year spread out, but in another year, we'll do a Volume 2, which will give more support to maybe one of the archetypes that didn't get enough love, and then also some new cards and new archetypes and new play styles to look forward to. And that's exactly what happened. We finally got that in Union Arena as well. There's the JJK Volume 2, and this is just a link to the announcement where, hey, they're getting a new color with a new play style, as well as it's been confirmed, I think it's from one of the live streams, if I'm not mistaken, the Gojo deck is going to get buffed, because for those that don't know, breaks my heart as well, but the Gojo deck is one of the worst ones from the JJK block. Super unfortunate because it has the best high rarity card, at least in my opinion, from a style standpoint. So it feels really bad to not get to show off that cool card. But of course, you can just, for the collector side of it, can go in a binder and you can, show it off that way all that you want. So there has been a kind of refocus or reimagining of, okay, we are going to continue to get these supports. I think it was like the Idolmaster set that also got a volume 2. Hunter x Hunter got a volume 2 that was confirmed. There's been quite a few at this point, right? So again, lending itself to saying, hey, I am a person who's only going to buy Jujutsu Kaisen cards, right? So now you are only buying one IP a year or one set a year. And again, if you want to do it base rarity, it is going to be super, super affordable. But then that's just kind of like the one that you pick up and continue to grow. Of course, there are always going to be the option of like every set that comes out usually has like 4 or 5-ish decks, or I should say 3 to 5, depending on the set, that people can play and try out. But of course, these volume 2s are really going to be the biggest impact in terms of, reestablishing the goodwill within the consumer base, saying, hey, we're not just going to print, 50 different IPs and never revisit them. So this is something that you can always look forward to, that there is a chance that if you are really excited about a certain IP, or again, like me, Tales of Arise, they most recently got an expansion. We could see a Tales of Arise Volume 2 at some point because of that expansion, which then again could help power up some of those older archetypes as well as introduce new play styles. So very excited for what this means for, again, the Western now, or the North American English audience, because it does confirm that we can look forward to this same style as well. Now, the other side of it is, again, talking about popular sets. So we did see things like, again, Tekken and Tales of Rise, which aren't as exciting or as big titles as some of these other ones, which, to be fair, but they did get something like Sword Art is going to be huge. And I'm a huge sucker for Haikyuu, which is confirmed for a set, but unlikely something that we're going to see in the West right away. But there are definitely more fan favorite sets that are coming out as well. And also they are doing additional things like signatures, and they're doing serialized action points in the booster sets instead of just a alt art. So they're doing a lot more in terms of boosting up the collectability and the surprise factor of opening up these sets now. So not only from a casual perspective has the box opening and overall experience gotten better, also from a collector side, where you have even more now of these signed cards with the voice actors, again, the different foiling for each different series. There's just a lot more to look forward to as you're opening up these booster boxes, and I think that was also a huge win for them. Again, one of the things we've seen from the English confirmed side is that we are getting English exclusive alt arts and signatures. So we're going to have to wait and see what that looks like in terms of how much they're really going to lean into that. And then the other thing that Weiss Schwarz has done that we can only assume is going to happen for Union Arena as well is we do get English exclusive sets from time to time, like Avatar: The Last Airbender and things of that nature. I think Guilty Gear was also an English exclusive set, if I'm not mistaken. So that does lend itself to, okay, what other types of sets might we get? Just have to wait and find out, but it does get me very excited for the opportunity of knowing all the other IPs that Bandai could lean into. We could see some really, really exciting English exclusive titles, and I hope they do bring that over. Now, with that all the way, let's talk about the different organized play structure, right? We talked about the collectability. We talked about where it fits in the market. We talked about the, buying 1 or 2 sets a year, things of that nature, right? But what does that actually look like, and what does the organized play, right? We've talked about, generally speaking, and again, this is for even in some of the tournaments in Japan, these IP-based games don't generally get a ton of a player base that comes out to play in like a regional format, but they do love to play in their more local or online formats as well. So I'm going to cover a little bit about what the schedule looks like for the North American version, and then also kind of bridge the gap of what did they do in Japan and kind of how is that going to come over as well. So again, we have the confirmed schedule. It is going to be October 2024 with Bleach and Hunter x Hunter coming out first, and then Jujutsu Kaisen in November. Of course, we then see a bunch of question marks in terms of what else might we get. Again, going back to that survey that was released, I would fully expect this to have a impact based on the popularity for each of them, so we can look forward to an update hopefully at Worlds or sometime in the future in terms of whenever they do like the next big demo caravan sort of thing, because there will be demo events at Bandai Card Fest Los Angeles if you're going. And they also did the demo deck campaign where we got 1,000 people got demo decks. So those are things you can look forward to, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more information out soon. But the interesting part here is that pre-release for every title is confirmed. This is a North American exclusive that who knows what they're going to do, right? So generally there's just like, hey, here's a pre-release, and you just kind of like buy stuff and you get like, oh, here's a cool shop promo that is a alt art that I wouldn't be able to get otherwise. So we're really waiting to see more information about that. And then we have the traditional store tournament volume like we've seen time and time again for Bandai Games, where it's a 3-month cycle. There will be the promos that you can get. And generally, based on the structure we see here, we would expect them to do promos around the 3 different titles. And then the one that's special event TBD, right? So this is not likely going to be a regional unless they just staple it on to one of the other events for the year. But it could be a larger, like, shop qualifying style event where it's something that it's really special that they host. And in Japan, they've done this where it's like championship qualifier, and then at the end of the year, they have like the big championship, right? Where this is again going to be IP focused and kind of that next step up for players. So it is really cool to see from both a casual and collector side. We are going to have the pre-releases, which is always exciting to get your stuff early. Maybe we'll get like a special mat like they've done for White Shorts as well. We have these store tournaments. We have a reason to go to your LGS, get some extra alt arts for your decks. And then of course we have the once a quarter something cool style event. So let's dig into each one of those a little bit more, right? So starting things off, we have the shop battle. These are, again, going to be your weekly events or weekly style events that gets players into the store. You get these alt arts. It might be like a once-a-month thing. Again, it all comes down to how your store wants to set them up. And you get these gorgeous alt art promos that can help you kind of full art out your deck that might not have a alt art itself already. So these will be shop battle exclusive alt arts that you can get for your deck. So again, I just use the most recent example of Sword Art Online because they have just gorgeous promos, it looks like, and that will be the way that, hey, if I really like sword art for this month, this is the set I can, or the event that I can go to get more of those promos for it. From there, we have the online events that happen in the metaverse, and this is where you can get all those cool action points. Again, having more alt arts for it. For this, in case Dr. Stone and the Idolmaster style. So this is something else, just one more way that if you really like some of those alt arts, you will have multiple ways to engage with the game and get them. Now, we have seen in Bandai Games that we do have online events here in the West, but they do all of their events in Japan through the Metaverse Online. So we did get the announcement that happened in the Metaverse. Will that come out west? Who knows, right? We have to wait and see what future announcements look like, but I would fully expect there to be some type of online game opportunity for this where players can get those really cool action points and alt arts that they're looking for. So even if you don't have a LGS who will actively be carrying Union Arena, because as I mentioned, putting out a set every single month is very stressful for stores. It is a pre-order only type of game. If you got one thing out of this video, please, I really want to stress that Union Arena and White Shorts, they are both pre-order only games. Go talk to your LGS if you are looking forward to the Jujutsu Kaisen set, or I guess the Bleach and Hunter x Hunter are coming out first, right? So they at least know that people are interested and they can pre-order it for you. That is super, super important for these style of games. But again, the online event is something you can look forward to, and I think is a really just easy slam dunk because a lot of people will be spread out within the various communities, right? White Shorts is very popular in California, but the various Bushiroad hubs like Chicago and stuff like that, but extremely dead in others. So I do like the idea of having an online regional or an online event that players can get these exclusive alt arts for. And then the last one, which we will likely not get because this is the original Union Rare, as they're called, with the red and white style. However, as you saw at the beginning of the video, the card back itself changed, where now it's a black and white format versus the red and white that they have in Japan. So really curious to see if we're going to get these. This is something that would be more for the regional events, or they had some for the Gunslinger side events. So it would be something that you either get there's like a CC version, there's a winner version, there's lots of different ones they have, but every single IP had at least one Union Rare that you could get, and that was the top of the top, the absolute highest rarity that you could earn, right? The winner prize card for that IP, and we have seen these things sell for, again, $300, $400, $500 if you get the winner version. So there is also going to be that kind of prize card and payoff that you can look forward to because the collectors are going to want these extremely limited cards. And that is kind of a really quick high-level overview of the organized play breakdown that we can expect. And again, hopefully more announcements will be coming very, very soon. So with that, that is a quick overview of Union Arena. And again, just a quick recap of my thoughts here at the end. Union Arena is a great casual collector's game that you can be excited to play with your favorite IPs, and a lot more to come down the road, where it could be Tekken, it could be Tales, it could be My Hero, it could be Yu Yu Hakusho, and it's just a fun game. No, it's not the most competitively insane and, lots of in-depth combos that you can pull off. It is very much of, I am building towards this one card in my deck as my key strategy. This is the thing that it does. This is how I'm going to win the game. But from a competitive side, it can be a little bit lacking, especially if you're coming from something like Magic or Flesh and Blood and Battle Spirit Saga, right? Where I think it does, again, lend itself to a more casual audience quite well. However, I am very excited for this. I've already printed off some demo decks, or full competitive demo decks, I should say, that I will feature on the channel at some point, just to get some basic gameplay out there. But otherwise, there are a few channels out there already that are covering Union Arena and have some gameplay for those who are interested. So, does this have a home in 2024? I very strongly believe yes. Once you understand where this game fits and understand that it is a side game for a lot of people that, again, just have that one or two decks that they buy a year that they keep in their bag, but the collectors keep the game afloat, I think this has a great spot for the Bandai community to be excited about and to look forward to, again, having some of these gorgeous cards with again, it doesn't have to be the most exciting gameplay, but it does have a lot of really cool IPs that carry it quite well. So I'm excited. I will be buying quite a few cases of Union Arena, open them up on the channel and all that good stuff. But let me know, what are your thoughts about Union Arena and which IP that we are getting from the start are you most excited about? JJK, Bleach, or Hunter x Hunter? And what do you hope is next? So with that, sorry again for the kind of long break here as I was getting over being sick and just trying to recover as we're getting ready for the coming out of Pro Tour and the Worlds and all that good stuff. But a lot more Battle Spirit Saga and other TCG content coming very, very soon. So with that, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.